Hi, welcome to my channel Cloud with Girish. From my previous video, you have seen several ways to use AWS Serverless Lambda function, both for API-based integration in non-generative AI use cases and for generative AI use cases integrated with Amazon Bedrock Service. In all these examples, I used synchronous invocation for Lambda integration. In this video, let's explore asynchronous invocation supported by AWS Lambda. When invoked asynchronously, Lambda returns a 202 status code indicating that the call was successful and the event has been passed for asynchronous processing. However, it is important to plan for monitoring and managing the subsequent processing steps. Depending on your use case, you may need to track whether the processing was completed successfully or if it failed. For example, consider an address book application where you add a new address record using an asynchronous call. While Lambda might successfully pass the data to the backend for processing, the operation could fail in later steps. In such cases, you would want to be informed about the failure. One effective approach is to configure a Lambda destination to capture failed events. In November 2019, AWS introduced support for destinations in Lambda. This feature allows you to choose where to send invocation results including destinations like another Lambda function, SQS, SNS, or Event Bridge. More recently, in November 2024, AWS announced support for using S3 as a destination for failed event. These enhancements allow you to specify an S3 bucket where all failed events can be stored for further analysis. In this video, we will explore how to configure S3 as a destination for failed events when invoking an AWS Lambda function asynchronously. Let's look at the architecture flow. We can invoke the Lambda function either via Event Bridge or S3 or other services asynchronously, and then once invoked, we can configure like multiple way the destination can be configured. Like I stated before, the four previously supported methods were either through SQS, SNS, Event Bridge, or another Lambda function. And now more recently, in November 2024, S3 is also as a supported mechanism for Lambda destination. So in this example, I'm going to use S3 bucket as the destination for the failed events. Before you start, just make sure that you have familiarity with the AWS Management Console, a basic understanding of Lambda function, a basic understanding of event-driven architecture, and a basic knowledge of Python programming. Let's get started. We're going to review the Lambda function, which is a very simple hello from Lambda function. I'm going to add a destination, which is S3 bucket, and then I'll add a code to force an exception in Lambda because I'm configuring the destination for failed event. We'll review the CloudWatch log. We'll review the destination S3 bucket to see if the failed event is logged there. We'll invoke the Lambda function using AWS CLI, and then we'll review the destination S3 bucket again. And towards the end, I'll do the cleanup, which is basically deleting the Lambda function and S3 bucket. So let's look at our function. Since the primary purpose of this is to demonstrate how destination work for AWS Lambda function with a specific focus on configuring an S3 bucket as a destination for failed event. So I am keeping it simple for the Lambda function. It's a very simple, like similar to hello world. I'm returning just a message hello from Lambda from this function. And this baseline function will serve as the foundation for demonstrating the destination feature. So for this walkthrough, I will use the AWS Management Console to create the function, and then I will add the destination configuration. So to create the function, if you are familiar with the Management Console, simply navigate to the AWS Management Console for Lambda function and then click on Create Function. I'm going to just name this function as hello world GB. You can name it whatever you want. And then I'm picking the runtime as Python 3.13. And then I'm also picking an existing role. You can also create a new role for this function. Either way is fine. So like I said, I'm using Python runtime, and then example code is shown here. This is a very simple code, and it can be updated in the Lambda code editor if needed. And again, I have done several workshop on Lambda and how to build a Lambda function using new editor and SAM template. So the link of that workshop is in the description. So if you're interested in that, please watch that video. So here in this function, I have just couple lines of code, and as you will see, all it's doing is basically once this Lambda is invoked, it's simply going to return like, hey, hello from Lambda message. That's all it's doing. So now I will add from the Lambda console, I'm adding a destination. So I have the option right here. So I'll click here, and then I will configure a destination for on failure event, right? And a point to note is that destination can be configured for both on success and on failure event. I'm only configuring it for the failure scenario. So here, like again, you will see various options. Like I said, there were 4 options were already there: SNS, SQL, SQS, another Lambda function or event bridge. And now S3 bucket is also supported. So when I configure it for on failure, I'm going to pick a destination. So I'm picking S3 bucket, and then I will provide the bucket here that I want event to be posted. Now, make sure that the Lambda function has the necessary permission to write objects to this S3 bucket, because without this permission, you will encounter an error when function try to write event to the destination bucket. So basically, just make sure that this Lambda function has the permission on the S3 bucket. Let's add a code because we are configuring it for the failure scenario. So it will only log event when the Lambda function encounters a failure. So I'm going to force it. So to force the failure, I'm going to write this line where I'm saying, hey, raise exception, right? Something went wrong. So basically, as you can see, there is no other condition here. So every time you invoke this Lambda function, basically it's guaranteed that it will fail, because without checking anything, it's simply raising an exception, right? So once we invoke the Lambda function after making this, due to this force exception, we'll see an error message like this, always, right? Because that's what we asking functions to do. So next we can review the CloudWatch log, and CloudWatch log will be created for this Lambda function automatically. And then this log will contain the same error that I was showing on the console. So basically that's the log has been created, and it will contain all our error log. Let's navigate to the S3 bucket that we have configured as the destination and check whether the failed event has been posted there. And as you can see, this is still blank, like it's empty. There is nothing posted here. Even though I have invoked the function, I would think that there will be one failed event at least there, but it's not there, right? So the reason it's not there is because the destination function only works when Lambda function is invoked asynchronously. So if function is invoked synchronously, then destination function will not work. So what we need to do is we need to make sure that our Lambda function is getting invoked asynchronously to have this destination feature work. So I could have configured this invocation through event bridge or S3 or another way, but for this workshop, what I'm going to do is I'm going to invoke this asynchronously through the AWS CLI command. So here is the command I'm using. So AWS Lambda invoke, this is the command, and I'm giving the function ARN for this hello world GB. And then I'm saying invocation type is event, which is an indication of asynchronous invocation. And then I have like the payload and the region I'm providing a response JSON. So basically what I will see here when I invoke, if I see status code 202, that means the function has been invoked successfully, because it's telling me that the function has been invoked in asynchronous mode, and it has been passed for the further processing, right? So it's not going to tell me like a success or failure. It's simply saying that the call was successful. So that's why 202 I'm seeing here. Now, if I go back to the S3 bucket, then I will see that there is an event, right? This is a failed event that has been logged here. So this is an example of that destination is working. So Lambda function failed and the failure event has been logged in the S3 bucket. I can download this failure event, analyze it using a text editor, or I can have like multiple event here and I can use other program to process these events and then take appropriate action. So once we're done with this, make sure that we do some cleanup so that we don't incur our resource usage, the cost in our cloud account. So we need to delete the S3 bucket, the CloudWatch log group, and the Lambda function. If you created any other resource during the process, then remember to delete those as well. So that's basically something that we need to do to make sure that all the cleanup has been completed. In this workshop, I demonstrated how to configure S3 as a destination for a Lambda function. Additionally, I showcased how to invoke the Lambda function asynchronously using AWS CLI command. I hope you found this tutorial helpful and informative. I'm constantly working on new content covering various AWS topics, so please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the Cloud with Girish channel. Your support helps me continue creating valuable AWS tutorials and workshops. Stay tuned for more exciting content. Thank you.